Why am I the one you call when you need someone? When you show me all your flaws, look at what you've done. And all those late nights on the phone, you told me I was beautiful, so good. No, I should've known, I should've known. I'm falling like a landslide of all the things I felt, and I'm all in and I can't hide, but you're in love with someone else. And how am I supposed to hold on? Can't believe I got it so wrong. I dream of you and I, falling like a landslide. I feel you slipping through my hands, and I don't know how. I thought that you would understand, but you let me down. All those late nights on the phone, you told me I was beautiful, so good. No, I should've known, I should've known. I'm falling like a landslide of all the things I felt, and I'm all in and I can't hide, but you're in love with someone else. And how am I supposed to hold on? Can't believe I got it so wrong. I dream of you and I, falling like a landslide. Hold on, can't believe I got it so wrong. I dream of you and I, it's falling like a landslide.
Connection. Line rate. Line rate. Connection. My brain. My brain.
kind of nice to actually have a mixer and music again.
I mean, this is what happens when you pour W all over your old one.
It's not what happened, but sure. Oh, Darren Chibi in the house.
What? Ansei Wong, what's up? Fellow non-nerds.
I gotta shout out Darren Chibi because Darren Chibi is actually the one that hooked us up with our guest that's on the night. So Darren, that's a thank you to you, sir. All right, well, ladies and gentlemen, it's about that time. It's been a while. Well, let's do this the right way.
Yeah,
let's get it started.
Distance nerding.
Ladies and gentlemen, oh, here we are. It is time. It is time, ladies and gentlemen. You are now watching The Bill on Thursdays. It is your favorite cool down time. It's like the opposite of what this is. Like, you know, I'm completely energetic, like crazy. No, we're gonna NPR this right now. Just
bring it down. Just
bring it down just a little bit.
Yes.
You know. Never, ladies and gentlemen, we are here. It's time. Graveyard.
Yes.
How have you been enjoying your time off? Even though we had you really haven't had time off on the show. Everybody else has because the Tuesday show has been it's been a little more off.
Oh, good. Exciting new things happening this week in prep for 2024, but we'll get to that at the end of the show. In case you can't see it, there's a new tag next to my name. We'll explain more about that later.
We're gonna have to talk about that. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's get into a little bit of housekeeping first, right? Let's talk about what keeps the lights on and keeps us continuing to do this, ladies and gentlemen. This show, this channel, everything that we do here at Distance Nerding is brought to you by the fine people over there at Poddex. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, Poddex are a unique interview question and episode starting prompts in the palm of your hand. So whether you are a new podcaster or an existing broadcaster looking to grow your audience or get more engagement, you're going to want to level up with poddex.com. Guys, head over to poddex.com. I guess they don't have a website anymore, so download the Poddex app and use the code NERDING10 and get 10% off your order. Completely worth it, completely awesome. We use them when we write our interviews, but then also with anything else. Graveyard is going to show you guys a little bit of some magic, because if you buy the actual deck, then you can do some magic right there. Look at that. It's beautiful. Fan them out.
It is.
What is our question of the day?
What's the most creative excuse to get out of something you didn't want to do?
Oh God, I've got the shits.
That's creative.
I mean, that's the most creative you're gonna get, right? It's like, oh, what's going on with you? Oh man, gotta go.
I mean, mine's clearly is that the beard's detached from my face and running amok and taking over the planet.
There is that. UGTB coming in from the W community. I'm digging that. We're actually going to do our W plug here in a second, man. Say Wong, I have not seen Iron Claw yet. I was going to watch it this weekend and got caught up with some family business. So
clearly that's the origin story of Dr. Claw from Inspector Gadget, right?
Oh. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, if the channel is brought to you by Poddex, then you may be wondering, where does young Phil get all this energy from on a regular basis? I'm going to tell you what it is right now. Ladies and gentlemen, young Phil is brought to you by Tubby. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. It's been a while. It's brought to you by Debbie.
Yes.
Oh man, I missed the air horn, man. I've been doing it with my mouth. The beer, and it's just not the same. All right, ladies and gentlemen, Debbie is a unique interview, or it's not a unique question. An episode starting prompt. I'm forgetting my own script over here. Ladies and gentlemen, Debbie is an emerging brand of energy drinks created to help focus, concentration, reaction time with no jitters or crash. Debbie contains no maltodextrin, no sugars, no fillers, no artificial colors or dyes. Now, you may be wondering to yourself, Phil, what makes Debbie different from all the other gaming supplements that are out there? I'm going to let you know what it is right now. Debbie is one of the few energy drinks that contains Neurofactor. Neurofactor is a neurotropic derived from the coffee fruit. Neurofactor helps keep your mind. I'm forgetting my own script. You know what? It's you know what?
It's because you didn't do 2 shows this week. You skipped 2 shows.
I skipped 2 shows this week. I skipped 2 shows this week. And now I can't remember any of the stuff that I normally say, right? But yeah, Neurofactor helps keep your brain focused and clear. Brain focused with some clarity, while the 150 milligrams of caffeine and 3 essential B vitamins help keep make you stay alert and energized. God, I'm fired. Guys, find out more about Debbie. Head over to www.debbie.gg. Use the code nerding10. Get 10% off your order. There are all kinds of delicious flavors in the Debbie lineup. Obviously, I need some Debbie.
Yeah. You're a tad rusty. I think you got so excited with your new mixer being back. You just purged everything else from your mind.
Literally, what's happening right now. So what flavor should I go with on this run?
What do you got still?
Got Dub Sludge. I've got Big Energy Tears. I've got Calio Cream. I've got the Galaxy Grenade. I've got the Dragonade. I've got the Push and Punch. I've got the Beach and Peach. I've got the Passion Joy Tea.
Ooh, you should do Push and Cream.
Push and Cream. That sounds just as dirty as I would like it to be.
See, Wong saying that Iron Claw is good, but historically inaccurate. I would say that's any movie is historically inaccurate.
I've heard a lot of good things about it. I heard it's really, really like it's messed up, and like a lot of people didn't expect it to be that messed up. Now, if you know the story of the Von Erichs, then you know that is a very messed up story to begin with.
Yes, it is.
But it's. I mean, that'll be it. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm over here stalling, but let's get into this. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's introduce the guest this week. This week's guest is a writer, an artist, filmmaker, and a vet. So we know we're gonna get along pretty well. All right. He's worked on documentaries. He's worked on a range of things from documentaries for the U.S. Navy's History and Heritage Command to managing broadcast operations for President Barack Obama and other celebrities and people in the world out there. Guys, please give a badass welcome to the amazing, the talented. Please put your hands together for Mr. Edward Coffey.
Thank you. That's quite the opening. I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. How's it going, man? How are things?
Not too bad. I'm away from the California, away from the Santa Cruz Mountains. I'm in rural Minnesota in the southeast corner here, next to right across from La Crosse, Wisconsin, on the Mississippi River. So colder than we're used to in the Santa Cruz Mountains, but not bad.
I'm just, you need to push some of that cold down here because it's been raining nonstop for 2 months. We need snow. Stop this rain.
So there wasn't any snow when we came. Every year we're here every Christmas and like it's been like we had a dusting of snow and now that's all melted away. So kids are disappointed, but that's all right.
So do you have family out in that area?
Yeah, my wife's family is here in Minnesota.
Okay.
The rest of my family is in Southern California. So
Makes sense. I mean, that like the majority of my family is in San Francisco, and then sprinkled in like New York and Miami too. So I get that. So yeah, before we jump into kind of like everything about you and kind of getting into your work and everything, we like to ask a couple of questions just to kind of get into your story and see, talk about you and who you are. So I'm going to ask you a couple questions here. If a film was made about your life, who would play you and why?
jeez.
What was the stumper? Most people were just like, "Oh, come on, man."
Gosh, I would say I don't even know, man. Maybe a young Jack Nicholson. I have no idea. I feel like saying Brad Pitt or Leonardo DiCaprio would not do justice to me. No. I don't know. I mean, gosh, I don't know if my life's a comedy or if it's a drama. I got to figure out the actor that would best represent that genre. Maybe Seth Rogen.
There you go.
Have to shave his head. Because he can walk the line of the genres. He can play the drama really well, and obviously he's a natural comic. He definitely is endearing. I don't know if I'm that endearing though. I'm gonna stick with it though.
There you go.
You just gotta do the laugh. Like
I can't.
we know somebody who actually naturally has a laugh like that too. So
yeah, we do. All right. So next up, we have, you're obviously in comic books, and we have this segment called Grown Up Geeky. So what did you geek out on when you were growing up as a kid?
I used to read a lot of X-Men when I was a kid.
Nice.
And I was caught up in it because, it was a drama. In my opinion, it's a drama sort of wrapped in this superhero tale, and it hits on a lot of current subjects. It does sort of step out of line, but a lot of the what drove me to it is, and I didn't really realize it at the time, is that it's a very well done, character driven comic book, and the characters really drove the stories. And I know it's not that hard to sort of prove because everyone's sort of the most dynamic character in the series, in my opinion, has been Wolverine. And when you sort of develop a character in that way and for as long and sort of have that dynamic of the character, it's sort of an easy book to follow as well. And there's Deadpool and given his backstory, right? So we sort of cling on to these character driven stories, knowing their backstories, and it sort of drives a reader to want to continue with the book, learn more about it. And it had grabbed me at a young age. I'd go to the 7-Eleven. We were poor growing up, so I get whatever change I had, and every month I go and get the pulp copy of Uncanny X-Men.
yeah, and I mean, who can't relate to a immortal guy with unbreakable and healing factor that's also a hardcore alcoholic? Just
right.
Very
the
true.
man had real problems, so.
I mean, we've said it on the show a couple times because we've done different kind of like top tens and things like that. And Wolverine, I've always said, as much as I love that character, he's always a bad day away from being a bad guy.
Right.
I think that holds true to his character though, and shows that the inner turmoil that a hero can actually have. Not everyone, I'm sorry, Phil, is the golden Boy Scout that is Superman.
Right.
I mean, I enjoy Superman, but I wouldn't say he's like my favorite character. I've always been more of a Batman guy, and it's because of the turmoil and kind of like the mental kind of, I don't want to say mental illness, but I mean, Bruce is mentally ill, so
he dresses up in bat to fight people. Yeah.
Yeah. The only time Superman grabbed me was the death of Superman's storyline, because of the vulnerability, right? Is that this character could be gotten, right? Because I mean, in my opinion, is like, all right, a man can withstand bullets, run faster, he can fly. Like, who fucking cares, right? You got to throw weakness at the character to create not that the stories can't be compelling, right? I mean, I often feel that Lex Luthor had a more dynamic story than Superman, and that in certain ways you kind of root for someone like Lex Luthor because of sort of his background and sort of his goals. That's, you got to acknowledge the terrible things, right?
Right.
But just from a story perspective, I found him more dynamic as a character to follow than Superman. And so, but Batman was also a compelling character. The backstory and sort of, he's a person with he's a nutcase that hunts nutcases.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And I mean that's those have always been my favorite Superman stories, are the ones where there is some type of vulnerability.
Right.
Like even if you think about like the one story that Superman has where he is the ultimate version of himself, right? When you get into Superman Prime, right? It's 1,000 years in the future. He's learned that he has no weaknesses. He can absorb pure sunlight, so he doesn't have to eat food. He's immune to kryptonite. He's immune to magic at this point. So he's basically there. And you think like, oh, it's not going to be that interesting of a story when you have a dude that like, is just living forever and is a god essentially. But the whole story is about his existential crisis of what do I do when I outlive everyone else? Like all the people that I've ever loved have died.
Right.
And what do I do to like occupy myself? What do I do to not go insane? And it's like it's showing that ultimate power can also be a weakness.
Right.
I mean, I just you know my love of DC. Like everyone bulletproof and can fly and run really fast. There you go. DC.
But DC, between not just Vertigo, but what became Vertigo, Black Label, but there are compelling. I feel that there's some of the more grounded stories to be told about superheroes. I mean, Marvel does it too, but I think DC does a good job with grounding characters or having just indie creators come in and sort of make heroes that are set in a world that is very real. You know what I mean? The Watchmen being a prime example of that. Alan Moore's work.
Yeah.
And so, I think I will always be a fan of DC for that reason, and for Batman. But Superman caught me in those, again, in those times where the vulnerability is there. I'm on it.
Yeah, I dig it. I dig all of that. So let's get into this, right? Let's talk about you. So how long have you been working as an artist and a writer? And I know we'll kind of jump into the military history, but like before all of that, like were you wanting to be an artist or a writer before joining the military?
So I'll take it back further. I mean, definitely before the military. I mean, when I went to college before I joined the Army, and so when I was in when I was in elementary school, all I wanted to be was a comic book artist. That's what I wanted to do, and so I worked hard at it. And I had How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way by Stan Lee and John Buscema, and I had a subscription to Wizard magazine. And I was always reading Greg Capullo's, his tutorials in every issue that he had, and so I would learn anatomy from Greg Capullo, and I would just sort of, get whatever literature I can on perspective and whatever. And so since I was in elementary school and into high school, it was something I had wanted to do. And then once I got to college age, or figuring out where I wanted to go to college if I could get in, I kind of realized my father was a political cartoonist, not a very successful one. And watching him sort of crash and burn trying to sell cartoons to periodicals, kind of decided, well, if I'm going to enter the world of art, it's got to be something potentially lucrative, right? And I wasn't foolish enough to believe that just because one goes to film school that makes you or carries the potential success once you get out, there's still a lot of work
Right.
that needs to be done. And for a lot of people, I always say for people wanting to go into film, if you're 18, 17, 18, 19 years old, I was like, yeah, just if you go to college, cool. That's all good. Jump on a set. If you can get onto a set, great. You can start writing and learning how to write. Great, right? You do these other things that sort of can get you onto a set. Then you're better off than hitting the books in film school. I don't want to demean film school, but in retrospect, knowing what I know now, I kind of wish that I had started working sooner rather than later, either in post. But anyway, as far as comics go, though, I mean, I wanted to do it, and I fell off of it once I went to film school. But people noticed that I can draw, and so other than school projects, I was doing storyboards for folks in film school, and I was even doing interior design. I was getting paid to do people's interior design homework because just because you want to do something, it doesn't necessarily mean that people can draw. So
Right.
I would like we were in a foundations for sketching for communications was one of the first classes you take as an undergrad at the college I went to, is the Academy of Art in San Francisco. And in that class, I'm kind of realizing, and I'm nervous because I went to college at 17, and I'm nervous because I don't know how to compare to these folks, and they couldn't draw for shit. A lot of them will come to me and be like, "Hey man, can you 20, 25-year-olds, hey man, can you do this for me?" And I'm like, "All right, I'll tell you what, I'll meet you halfway. I'll start the outline, right? I'll do, with a face or whatever, and then you take it from there." But it was kind of weird because having done anatomy and learning, as I would look at Playboy, where I would look at other things, and that's where I would actually learn how to draw. Lingerie mags, or my mom's boyfriend at the time find a Playboy mag, and I was studying it. I was studying how the body form is, and it wasn't the greatest stuff. But I mean, even in that class, they would bring nude models in, and not to be crude, be like, "Man, you drew that dude's dick." I was like, "Yeah, man, because we're supposed to draw the whole fucking thing, right?"
Right.
And so,
So you really did watch. You really did read Playboy for the articles.
more than the articles. I read Playboy for the references, So, but yeah, I mean, it was art was always, drawing was something that I'd always do, and I didn't want to go to school for it because I figured, what are they going to teach me that I couldn't teach myself or hadn't already taught myself, right? And I'm not saying that I'm the best at it, but I feel that, I mean, if I had to go to school right now I wouldn't go to learn how to draw. I feel like I'm doing okay as it is, and seeing how other artists do it and watching their processes is like, reference heavy stuff, and like, all right, I shouldn't feel bad about using references and whatnot, right? So yeah, so I went to film school. I was going to do post-production visual effects, and I was hoping to get a job at ILM or DreamWorks or any of the post-production studios in the Bay Area. And I kind of fell in love with the camera, and so I was in a library at school, and I saw a service member on the cover of a magazine. I think it was a videographer magazine, and they were lying and prone with a Canon XL1, and I was like, I want to do that, and that was it for me. So I
want
took
to do
all
that,
this,
like laying in the prone, right?
right. So, well, little did I know what that would mean eventually. I didn't want to be there, but anyway, I had took all the cinematography classes, all the lighting classes, directing classes, and then directing actors for film classes, and sort of wanted to get that foundational stuff, but maintaining that portfolio in post-production because, me in my mind is like, I need to get employment. And the Academy of Art was that place people were getting hired out of because, the Matrix post-production work, ESC was doing a lot of post-house work. So a lot of companies, there were Tippett, ESC, which is gone now, the Orphanage, which is gone now, ILM, a lot of these post houses, and even jumping into video games. It was a safe way to get employment. And they were all coming from the Academy of Art and a couple of other schools in the East Bay too. So, once I got out of film school, I was like, you know what, I'm going to do the Army thing. And then I ended up doing mostly strategic communications and sitting behind a desk before I finally got back out with a camera. But yeah, hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah. I mean, so kind of what made you take the plunge then into getting back into this and then creating your comics?
So once I got out of the Army, I worked as a civilian for the Navy, and then I started reconnecting with film school people, and they sort of brought me on to help them out with other things. So I did my master's for writing in film, television, and digital media, and I actually got membership into the Writers Guild of America West's Independent Writers Caucus, and even outside of that, I managed to make connections with managers and producers who would read my stuff. My stuff was that good that even today, if I reached out to, I have a couple of contacts, and reach out to them and say, hey, give me, can you sell this or not? I can do that. I have that door open to me. But when the pandemic hit, I wasn't working on Rise. I was kind of over Rise as a screenplay. I had written it as a feature film, and then I'd rewritten it as a 1-hour drama. And then I pitched it to a lot of places, Warner Brothers, Amazon Studios, who else? Tinker Toy, a whole bunch of big studios and production houses. And again, this is sort of where I managed to continue that line of communications with these producers. Is if I have something, then I send them a log line and a short synopsis. I never send them a script, but say, hey, I got this thing. Do you want to read it? And they'll answer me back and say, you know what, the market's chill on that right now, or yeah, send that to me. I want to read it. And so once the pandemic hit, I was like, well, what the heck am I going to do? No one's making anything, right? And so I started, and I was working on really getting my foot in that door, and that door sort of was kind of nudging closed. And so I started drawing Rise, and I was creating that 6-page to 10-page sample that Dark Horse and Image Comics wants for consideration for publishing. And so I did up those pages, and then started, I pitched one to Image, and they came back and said, it's not something we're looking for in our catalog. And then I found an agent, and that agent said, I can get this into the hands of publishers. And where are you at right now with this? And I was like, well, I just have this publisher sample, which is like the middle of the pilot script. And but I am working on the comic book's first issue. And I was like, well, where are you at with that? I was like, oh, I think I'm about, I was doing another sample of that, making that another sample. So I'm about 6 pages in. He's like, well, how soon can you get a first issue for me? And I was like, oh, I can get you a first issue. I think it was November 2021, I think, or 2020. I can't remember. Either 2020 or 21. So, and the agent that I got was a big agent. And I'm not going to say his name because he kind of ghosted me. But so I got him the first issue, and I had mentioned like, hey, I had pitched to these people, and Amazon Studios is very interested in this because of the IP potential is as a graphic novel. And so I gave him the names and the email addresses of these people, and he didn't get back to me. And so one of my mentors is also repped legally by this person. I reached out to him, and I said, hey, what's up with this guy? And he said, he ghosted me too. He's supposed to be representing me on this lawsuit, and I wrote him everything that needed. Like, I did the work for him, and for whatever reason, he's not coming back to me. So I have no idea what's going on with him. And he had mentioned that he had some medical issues or whatnot. And so I was like, okay, well. So I kept going with the comic book with Rise, and then I got to that first issue, and then I was signed to this guy at least for a year, and so the comic book was done. He wasn't pitching it, and I didn't want to pitch it anywhere because I was like, I don't know what's going on with this guy, if he's got health issues or not, but I sure as hell am not giving him a percentage of it for not doing any of the work. So so I waited for the contract to expire, and then I just launched a crowdfund. So,
nice. Yeah. So how many issues? You said it was originally a screenplay, and you cut it down to an hour. Is the comic going to be the full length of the original screenplay?
No, the comic book is so the comic book is its own beast. Rise is a huge universe. and it sort of tells the backstories of the characters. I divert away from stories at the core story at times to sort of get into the backstory of the characters. We kind of go into U.S. history and the Civil War and its ramifications, Jim Crow's ramifications, even on the influence of Nazi Germany, and how that sort of affects the story.
Mhm.
So it goes into the deep dive of sort of how U.S. history and U.S. policy and certain aspects and domestic policy sort of influenced our adversaries that we eventually went to war with. And so it dives into the characters' backstories in a way that sort of addresses stereotypes and kind of, it's grown into this world that once I got the first issue done, I started working on the second issue. I kind of I didn't take so much a pause as I worked on writing samples because the pandemic was closing, and I started writing new stuff and wanted to get those samples out, and those samples were getting read by people, and there were people saying, "Hey, what about this?" I wrote a show called Tasoy, and they're like, "Hey, can you what's the plan for this?" Right? Because as a show, we don't see this going that far. And I was like, well, I mean, I tend to write things in the 1 hour, the half hour, and if it can be made into a half hour comedy or into the feature. And so yeah, I mean, I can envision this as a feature, and you're like, all right, well, let me read that feature when you get it done. And so I'm working on those things, and then the WGA strike hits, and I'm just like, I can't, the pandemic, then I can't catch a fucking break, right?
Right.
So so then I pivoted to an IP that had, I wouldn't say was popular, but it's the IP that has gotten me the most meetings and the continued relationship with these executives and these managers. And it's a script I've written called False Flag, which is a feature drama. And it's about a single father who is mourning the loss of his son in the aftermath of a mass shooting.
Mhm.
And these conspiracy theorists come to his small town, and they demand proof about, this gaslight the whole town into saying, this thing didn't happen, and they're demanding proof. And the father's just, trying to ignore him. And it gets to this place where, you can't ignore it anymore. Right.
Right.
So I said, you know what, Rise is a big beast. It's going to be, a lot of writing, a lot of drawing. And the False Flag is it's a sealed, like the script is locked. Right. And one of the issues that I had with False Flag is, this manager that I had this relationship with, he's like, this is a well-written script, but the problem is that the people that we need to sit in the theaters, you're poking at them. And so, this would do well on as an indie. And I tell him, like, yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to make this big budget film out of it. It's obviously an indie, right?
Right.
And and I told him my desire to make it myself anyway, right? Is what this is it's the writing sample, right? And it's gotten me this place, right? So it's done its job.
Right.
And so with the strikes happening and sort of as it was sort of happening in early this year, I just started drawing False Flag. And I got very quickly got to 6 pages, 5, 6 pages. And I was like, I'm going to finish this before I finish. I'm going to finish 100 pages of this before I finish. Where am I at? I had 10 pages done of the second issue before I get 14 more pages done of the second issue of Rise. And so I was like, all right, if I'm not killing Rise, but I'm just putting it on the shelf for now. But if I'm going to put it on the shelf, then I guess maybe it's good I put it on the shelf at the first issue, especially with the number of titles that are out that are called Rise. I'm going to re-release it as Phoenix 6.
Okay.
Which is, so it's going to be same story, but a different title. And I want to separate it from those other comic books called Rise. And then there's that show on Disney that came out called Rise. So I was like, all right.
Right. And I mean, that makes sense given that's Conway's call sign, right?
Right. That's his call sign. And so, and spoiler is that, Phoenix 6, the moniker sort of comes from, he's always going to be Phoenix 6 because that's given to him. Like, he survives everything, right? They don't know how he's just the man who survives and comes out of the ashes renewed. And that's Colonel Conway. That's his sort of legacy. So, but yeah, so it's going to be Phoenix 6, and and I'll have a re-release on that once I sort of pivot back to that. Those stories, for the most part, have been written. The breakaway stories that I have that weave back into the core story, but right now, False Flag is my I'm working on it. I mean, I probably put up the iPad for the night, but I'll probably work more on it tomorrow and the day after, and then I'm just going to keep drawing pages until I've reached the end of that. And like I said, that'll probably be done sooner rather than later.
Right. And let's kind of get into that. So with False Flag, I just noticing off the little bit that I got to read, is that main character though, or not the main character, the villain-esque guy at the beginning? Is that basically Alex Jones?
It is Alex Jones. I wouldn't say what it is that serves as sort of a clip, so to speak, of what we're sort of diving into. Alex Jones is not the protagonist of the story. It's a guy that's a wannabe who wants to be Alex Jones and is much more extreme in his desires and methods. And so I wrote this as apolitically as I possibly could, right? Because I understand that I do need that broad audience. And at the core of this story is it very much is about a person grieving loss and what happens when you interrupt that grieving process, right? What happens to a person when that natural process of grieving is just stopped. So I mean that's basically at its core what it is, and it just happens to be somebody who is playing that part like Alex Jones, but he himself, the protagonist comes from not sort of a sordid or a dark background, but just one who is caught up in what internet fame can get you. And then of course what grieving in his own right. So sort of some of his backstory comes from real people. I don't know if you heard about the Texas church, that mass shooting that happened there that killed the pastor's daughter. There was a couple there. There's a husband and wife who would harass the priest and demand the proof. They like dig the grave up and let me see that this grave is not empty. Like that was who they were, right? And they would record themselves, and it got pretty bad to the point to where they finally got caught because they were live streaming themselves on the church property. And the pastor was finally able to serve them with papers. And then once they were served, the police were there to arrest them. So this is the characters are sort of based on real people and the things that happen or have happened. And so there's another story of a guy who, and this is where part of this guy's backstory is, and the tragic background for the antagonist is that, he's also grieving the loss of his daughter, who committed suicide. And the reason why she committed suicide was because the father would sort of harass her in a way, subtly but aggressively at times, about his daughter's sexuality, who was lesbian. She was gay. And so this is based on a real person. And it was a guy in Mississippi who came to a rally it was an anti-LGBTQ rally, and he comes there in support of the LGBTQ community. And cameras caught him because he had photos of his daughter, and sort of saying like, "This is my daughter," and how he messed up. And it was kind of, he was, and I hate to say this, but he was just like your stereotypical Southerner. You just had that drawl and that you kind of think, but he's like, it was wrong, and he just it was wrong of me. He fully believed that he was the one that put the noose around his daughter's neck, and caused her to kill herself, and that he wished that he could go back. He would have rather had his daughter, and so he was rallying for the rights, their individual rights, right, personal rights, beyond that, but just if he hadn't had done the things. And so that's where this character's story is as well, is that he, I sort of pulled almost directly from that, is that he shows up at the at a place where he sort of the backstory of the protagonist too is that his wife committed suicide, And
Oh,
so
man.
he's at this counseling session, where group counseling, they're supporting each other, and he shows up, gaslighting the people, but he's also there, telling his story, but he's also doing it to harass him as well, And so a lot of what comes out of False Flag, people will say, "Oh, this is woke bullshit" or whatever, and it's like, well, it's real stuff that's happened, right? I pulled from real stuff.
Right. Yeah.
I dramatized it to a certain degree, but some of it wasn't that hard to dramatize, right? And so, getting to, the point is that, hey, you know what? It sounds like we're all grieving here, right? And so that's very much the story that I wanted to tell is what happens when you interrupt that grief, and
Mhm.
it's also sort of exploring this guy's background, and what grief are you not, um, what grief are you not
Like, what are you
getting
not?
over, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's that seems to be, you have lost a lot of your stories, and it seems like you also had, talk about your dad being a political satirist, that you kind of drew from that a little bit, especially here as well.
Right.
So yeah, I like, it's, you don't have to make stuff up when the world is a scary place as it is.
Right. Right. My wife always says, you pick tough subjects to write about,
Hmm.
But that makes
and
for
so
interesting stories, though, and
Right.
yeah, I mean, especially when it's something that's like relatable, like where you can relate on a level, or not even like it puts perspective onto
Mhm.
things for you, like if you're somebody who can't relate to something, then you can like look at the perspective of like somebody who is going through something like that.
right. And 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 I guess to kind of back up, is what brought me to False Flag was I was actually, when talking about dropping or putting Rise on the shelf for the
Mhm.
moment, was I actually was writing the short film version of False Flag, and I was going to start reaching out to folks and going, hey, let's collaborate and make this short film, because there are people that are interested in doing it.
Yeah.
And that was when the writer strike happened, and then I was just like, I'll just draw it.
Yeah, I mean, it essentially is sitting in a place like Red State from Kevin Smith,
Hmm.
where
Right.
it's definitely something that would have to be an indie thing, so you can kind of like tell your story the way that you want to tell it.
Yeah.
Right, right. It was so, as I'm approaching the comic book, I am looking at it as, sort of the influences, is Barry Windsor Smith, Jock, um, just in the artwork, and sort of thinking of EC comics and horror comics of the past, right? As I'm
Right.
looking and approaching, and I'm, as a graphic novelist, like, I've got a little bit more leverage and some latitude, and so, this guy's not just grieving, but is haunted, right? And so I'm trying to, using the colors and the chiaroscuro and the techniques, and really um, making it a horror comic,
Hmm.
and telling this story in a way that is reminiscent of horror comics.
This is really up your alley, Graveyard.
Oh, absolutely is. I'm a horror guy all day long.
Hence the name Graveyard.
Yeah, there's that too.
There you go.
Yeah, I mean that's great. I think it's from what I've seen, it's a great idea. I love it. Absolutely love the idea. And do you ever have aspirations for it to eventually become a short film after the comic and kind of do like a multimedia attack on it?
So yes, that the other intent is to basically say, hey, if enough of these fly off shelves, I don't expect it to really fly off shelves, but if there's enough of a consumer base
Hmm.
to read the story, that it might do well as a film, as an indie film.
Right.
And and just as a screenplay, as a feature screenplay, I mean, it got an 8 out of 10 on the Blacklist. And so people were reading it on, that market.
Hmm.
We're going, hey, I mean, this story needs to be told.
Right.
And um, so yeah, I mean, it's gotten, it's a screenplay that has, it's placed in competitions. And like I said, it's that script that's sort of gotten everybody to go, oh no, you can send me, when you have a script, you send me the log line, and I'll tell you whether or not I want it. And that's the script that did it. So it's if it wasn't that good, then industry folk would just say, would either not respond to an email, which is an obvious no, or they would say it's not what I want at this time, which is, the door is still open.
Right.
So
that sounds, like I said, that sounds great. I hope for you that eventually they open that door and create a movie out of it. I think it'd be a great stuff, especially some of the, it sounds a lot better than most of the crap we've gotten this year.
I mean, we need more original stories, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Everything's a sequel.
Right. Everything's a sequel or something's being rehashed or being remade. Right. So I mean, original stories are definitely things that we need more of, and then especially like a story that's as well written as this. Mm-hmm. It's definitely something that I'm 100% behind, doing getting this out there.
Yeah. Well, I've had these pitches with these studios, and I think it was I'll just say it was Amazon. I was in a pitch with Amazon, and she had her foot up. She's sitting like this, and she's finger fucking her keyboard, and she's listening. And then I had said, and yeah, it's a comic book, and then she just went, "It's a comic book."
Said the magic words.
Magic word. Is it done? How is it done? I was like, have your agent send that to me. And then, it was it's, you don't notice that you have to pick up on the body language because you have to know when the pitch is going bad,
right?
To pivot it, right? Because you're never pitching one thing, you're pitching multiple things. And so, but yeah, it's just and it was at that point, I was this is going awful. So I pitched the stuff I hoped would be, False Flag was one of the first things I pitched. I pitched to Soy. I pitched, all the things that people have gotten back and said, find a market for it. And I was just all right, well, let me just throw my IP in, right? And so I pitched Rise, and I said comic book. That demeanor changes immediately because if IP exists in the world, then it, studios feel safer about it, and that's really at the core what it is. It's a gamble, and you'll hear a lot of people, a lot of assistants or whatever that work for studios, and they're working for studios and they're trying to find stuff to make. They have libraries of scripts. Just because someone sells a script, that doesn't necessarily mean it's ever going to get made, right? So there are these libraries of scripts, and they go, all right, what are we going to make this year, right? And so instead of going to that library of new scripts, they go, actually, here's a list of IP from the 80s. Pick one, and then we'll remake that. All right. Oh, Back to the Future 4. Which I love Back to the Future. What are we gonna get? Is anyway, I'm not gonna jump into that, but the whole IP remake of just I appreciate J.J. Abrams' take on Star Wars, but I appreciated what's his name, Ryan Johnson's approach even more, because it just said, yeah, we got all the Star Wars stuff, right? We got all the story, but you know what? Fuck the structure, right? That and let's do no. Rey is a regular person, right? And there were things that Ryan Johnson set up in the second that I was just we're going to a new place, and we're going to build a whole new Star Wars. And then when the third one, when the third one of that, when J.J. Abrams came back and made his, it's the same fucking shit, beat for beat, for beat. It's the same. It's fucking A New Hope.
Yep.
Beat for beat. And so I was thoroughly disappointed. I was grateful for J.J. Abrams' take. Ryan Johnson's really, in my opinion, was he took it to a different place, and I don't think it's one that anyone needs to like or dislike. It doesn't matter, right? It's just the difference of story. He went to a different place with it, and for me, that's something that I appreciated. And I know that fandom sort of probably wants that formula, which is fine, but that expansive universe, is it came back to the same universe, and I was like, I guess.
But we also all know that Star Wars fandom is pretty toxic, so
yeah,
it can be, yeah. So,
but speaking of the scary episode 9, let's talk about your other book you have here of Don't Forget to Feed the Watchers.
The Dark Watchers.
The Dark Watchers, yes.
Yeah.
So with the idea of, being a horror guy, I love the idea, especially, the snippets we were able to read of the dark horror anthology, right? So that seems, without spoiling anything, you have a little bit of sci-fi elements in Rise. Obviously, you have the political satire and things dial up to 11 with, False Flag. So why horror then?
So I am a horror fan. I feel that in horror that there's a lot of subtext that doesn't get picked up.
Mm-hmm.
There's always the moral of the story, right? And I know that screen sort of picks up on what the sort of the stereotypes that sort of happen in horrors, like, but there's other subtext that sort of picked up with doing the right thing or whatever. And so I've recently been taken up watching horror films that I was too young to watch as a child.
Mm-hmm.
And so like Nightmare on Elm Street, I think in the last couple of weeks I might have watched 4 times in a row.
Nice.
But I mean, I read EC Comics as a kid too. Again, I picked up that from a 7-Eleven. There was a reprint of a super old comic.
Yeah.
And so I picked up I think one of the stories was a guy who got pushed. He got pushed in front of a New York City train, and was burned, or anyway, something horrific happened to the dude. And this dude, flame and all, haunted the guy that killed him, and so and that one didn't scare me. I think my mother had said, you in her thick Filipino accent, said, "I told you not to read that," and so
Hella Pinoy.
yeah, and so I was like, and I wasn't scared. I was being babysat the day that I read that comic book, and I wasn't scared of what. I didn't have a bad dream. I was scared because the one of the guys that was babysitting us had a gun. We lived in a rough neighborhood, and I was like, "Is this guy gonna shoot me?" That was what I was scared of. But I didn't want to say that. I didn't want to wake up from a nightmare and say, like, "Yeah, it was a comic book, right?" I didn't even say it was a comic book. But anyway, so for one, I like long ass titles, and so don't forget to feed the Dark Watchers. Something is killing the children. Right.
Yeah.
I love that title.
Yes.
Right. Just other than liking the book itself, I like the title. Right. We always find them when they're dead. Right. Like every issue, the whole 90% of the cover is the fucking copy of the title. Right. And so, but don't forget to feed the Dark Watchers is based on the Dark Watchers, which is a real legend in the Santa Lucia Mountains in Big Sur, which we don't live too far from. And it sort of takes what it started out as was as a satire on Jack Kerouac and how people come to the Bay Area from all parts of the world to retrace Jack Kerouac's footsteps on the road in Big Sur. And they go and they end up in Bixby Canyon and Bixby Creek. And really, if you've read about Jack Kerouac, so one of our teachers in school was Alan Kaufman, who'd known Jack Kerouac and often did not say pejorative things about him, but had some real backstory on him. And even if you read the scrolls and, he uses his real name and he uses the real name of those around him. Dude was a narc. And if he were alive today, he would have stormed the Capitol on January 6th and voted for Donald Trump, which, hey, fine. Well, not fine exactly, but vote for Donald Trump. Yeah, that's fine. But that's who he was. I mean, he supported McCarthyism, right? This guy. So, but people have this lore about Jack Kerouac where they kind of think, this legend or it's anyway. So we follow some kid, out of the East Coast, maybe Syracuse or somewhere, and he does the trip all the way out west, and he finds himself at Cafe Trieste. And I used to hang out and write in Cafe Trieste, and the beatnik poets were still there hanging out. And you don't bother them because they're old, decrepit, and barely walking. But Ferlinghetti used to come over and sit in Cafe Trieste, and I would sit there when I forget his name. I'm not going to spend time on it, but there are poets you'd sit next to, and it was just a regular Tuesday, right?
Right.
But when you go into the bathroom, take a piss, tiny ass bathroom, and on the wall it says Jack Kerouac was never here. The Cafe Trieste in San Francisco, and it's true. He was never at, he was at City Lights across the street, but he was never in Cafe Trieste. And so people come there and think, trying to follow whatever footsteps they believe, and then so we follow this guy as he travels and he hitchhikes and he ends up, and then he ends up in Kerouac's old cabin in Big Sur, and he finds a scroll hidden in the wall. It's like, oh my God, has this never been discovered? And we go back into the story about Jack Kerouac and how he was always drunk and high on barbiturates, and he's writing his book. And it's not that this is his first time. He's just defiant as all hell. And it's basically Jack Kerouac against the Dark Watchers. And so anyway, so that sort of expanded into, you know what, there are other stories to be told, about the Dark Watchers and people that sort of, we fall on the fame is don't forget to feed the Dark Watchers. And everybody always forgets to feed the Dark Watchers. And then so this chaos sort of ensues. And I don't know if you've ever been in the Santa Cruz Mountains during a storm, but when those trees, those 200, 300-foot trees start falling, it's the scariest fucking thing you'll ever experience. Because you're hoping that it doesn't either fall on you or it doesn't fall on you while you're trying to evacuate.
Right. So have you had any experience of the Dark Watchers yourself?
So here's the thing. As much as I love these types of stories and I'm entertained by them, I don't believe in them. But that's also what makes this unique, right? Is that we have people like me that go to this place and they don't believe in the Dark Watchers, or they scoff at the Dark Watchers. And so they don't leave out their tribute or their food or whatever for the Dark Watchers. And our characters, our protagonists, end up getting eaten, becoming the sacrifice, or something else sort of happens. And so I have a co-writer on that, which is Michael Peterson, who's a fantastic writer. And so we're sort of taking our time with it. I'm probably going to push ahead with a story in the coming year, at least get one issue out. And I might make it a longer than your typical 24 to 28 pages. But it might not be the Kerouac story, but it might be something that sort of intros the Dark Watchers in a way that sort of gives background to what they are, who they are. Even going back, and maybe not for this issue, but, we've pitched stories back and forth to each other, going as far back as the history of time, with Native Americans sort of facing off with these or Spanish conquistadors who don't believe in the Dark Watchers, while the Iselan tribe, continues their ritual of continuously feeding the Dark Watchers. And again, just the way that I write and the things that I write about, just sort of the butchering the Spanish did to the native tribes on the West Coast. So so we get the Spanish sort of so it includes some history, and then we go into the future too and look at what climate change does. There's this patch of redwood trees that sits atop the lone tall peak of the Santa Lucia Mountains, and it's what's left of the redwoods between the climate change and the logging. And folks that want to get up there and either out of the lore of or to log the last redwoods, coastal redwoods, and sort of these bad things start to happen. So, but as far as me seeing or experiencing, I mean, I don't know. I feel like I've gotten closer to mountain lions than the Dark Watchers. So,
yeah, I mean, I'm a huge horror fan. I know people, and Phil knows people too, that do the cryptidverse they're working on right now, that do stories across the country for lesser known stuff like that, and are making a whole universe out of it.
Yeah. Well, there's also, we have a Bigfoot museum in our little town that we live in Felton, California. And so he has Steinway's son wrote a book about the Dark Watchers. And so he's got a copy of the book signed by Steinway's son, and I talked to him about it and said, I took my son to go to the Bigfoot Museum since it's so close, and sort of mentioned the Dark Watcher story, and then he pulls the book out like it's just old dude with his beard, and he slides the book over like I'm in Gremlins, right? So anyway, slides the book over, and I'm reading. I was like, "Is that his signature?" He's like, you know. And I just feel like I wanted to say how much, you know. I'll buy it. I was like, he's never gonna let it go. This guy's probably gonna bring it in the grave with him, and so.
Yeah. So I mean, so is it kind of be all different stories of different people that interact with the Dark Watchers then?
Yes. So I know it in my mind is like it's going to get hard to sort of tell these stories, and at some point the goal of Redwood Comics as a whole is just more than my IP, is to have other artists and writers come on either with their own original IP, but also say what can someone do with the Dark Watchers, and expand on that story. Even having different interpretations of what the Dark Watchers look like. Some people have the Dark Watchers and it's just the guy wearing a top hat, right? In other cases, they're these demonic creatures.
Right.
But there's this photo close up, like this macro lens photo of an ant that's out there, and it looks just fucking horrifying.
Yeah.
And when I saw that picture, I was like, that's it. Right. So I'm telling, so everyone, the world is going to know once they get out, like my version of the Dark Watcher is going to be, it's a fucking ant's face because it's horrifying.
Fucking terrifying, man.
Yeah.
So that's the intent. I think the first issue we had talked about was doing, it's called $1 Million. Let's call it $1 Million Cabin. I don't know. We did a satire on the cost of living in the area, and it's Silicon Valley VPs.
Right.
Have their retreat in their $1 Million Cabin, their overpriced cabin in Big Sur, and one of them plots on killing the other, and it sort of plays on the they're Indian, and so they believe in the god. What is it? There's a first Hanuman, I think is what it's called, and so she believes she's giving tribute to Hanuman, and I'm probably butchering the pronunciation of that name, but she believes she's giving tribute to that, and the husband's just fucking over it, and he's plotting to kill, and things go awry because he forces her to forget to feed the Dark Watchers.
Oh, I like it. I like it. I Phil can attest. I will gobble anything up horror to no end.
That so I'll also admit is Don't Forget to Feed the Dark Watchers is more popular than Rise, an unreleased issue, because I'd drawn up the poster. And I was at Silicon a couple years back, and had those, or not last year, I had those, a stack of them printed out. And anytime anyone came by, like all the handouts were gone, and I kept one just as a sample. And people go, when does that come out? And so like, we're working on it. We don't have a solid date yet. And so, so it is more popular than Rise. At this, as for what my metrics tell me. So I am hoping to get that out sooner rather than later. So the considerations are working on that in between False Flag. It is a piece that I feel like I can have more fun on. I'm on a page of False Flag right now where I'm like, I just gotta get over this page so that I can get into the next page and see if I like doing the next page. Sometimes it's fun, sometimes it's not, but anytime I've done concepts or writing or drawing my writing partners stuff, I've had more fun with that on Don't Forget to Feed the Dark Watchers than I have had on. Not that it's not fun, but it is fun when I'm doing horror. I mean, it's just you kind of, your brain sort of goes into, it sort of detaches and you're able to really have fun with it.
That's awesome.
I was gonna say Graveyard will attest that 100% because that's all. That's all he does.
That is pretty much all I do. Yes. Yeah. I mean, so do you have any plans of? Would you have any ideas of pitching that then as a series? We got Creepshow. 4 seasons on Shudder essentially. Would you pitch that as well?
So it's harder to sell anthology, and I know that. Just call it Death, Love, and Robot, or Death, Love, and Robots is up there, and it's a very popular show. Black Mirror, obviously, also, but then what other anthologies? Creepshow, yes, and Tales from the Crypt. It's not as big. It's harder to sell, and so having to keep up with the Dark Watchers or convincing and so first off, I haven't pitched Don't Forget to Feed the Dark Watchers. No. But in my mind is, will I have a place to pitch it, or would I consider pitching it? I don't think so, just because I know how hard it is to sell. And so I wouldn't, at least I wouldn't pitch it to someone. Yeah, that's a hard one to sort of work through. It's hard to sell an anthology series. So basically, what I'm saying is in the pitches that I've been in, when I pitched to Soy, I pitched it as a series that goes backwards. And so Tasoy is about a Filipino restaurateur who is on the cusp of opening his own restaurant when he's sort of forced to reconnect with his estranged son who's sent to him from the Midwest to California. And so the way I pitched this was it was a show that goes backwards. And so we meet Remy, who's the protagonist, as you know, his marriage is already over. He's years beyond it, and he's years estranged from his son. And his son has actually come back not just because of the trouble that he's in, but also to sort of get his father's blessing to allow his stepfather to adopt him. And so he's on this mission to sort of do that. And his mother sort of sees the necessity for this kid to reconnect with his culture because he's mixed, where she is worried, you know, for as much as she can keep the culture in him, she's worried that she doesn't want him to lose it. She thinks it's more a part of him that he realizes at this juncture where he's asking to be adopted. And so she sends him to San Francisco for the summer where, you know, dad's like, hey, I'm about to open this restaurant, right? You know how hard I've worked on this. It's what tore us apart, right? And if you send him now, you know, I'm not sure I can get this thing done, right? I don't know how much attention I can give him while I'm trying to open this restaurant. So so I pitched it as it going backwards. So we go from that in the next season, we go years back at the start of the deterioration of the marriage. And then we go back to where these folks fall in love. And then we go back to the 1930 Watsonville riots, where we explore both the same characters, these two characters who are obviously not the same characters, but I hope to use the same actors as we explore sort of what it's like to be in an interracial relationship that at least has that level of nuance to it. And so we meet these new characters, descendants. One is a descendant of Remy, and sort of his leaving the Philippines and becoming a man, working the fields in Delano and then Watsonville, and then getting into a relationship with a white woman, and then getting to this place where they're going to get married, and then the Watsonville riots happen, and sort of their experiences. And so it addresses sort of the nuances and coming from where, you know, living with the legacy that you live with, being, you know, at the time, Filipinos were considered Americans because the Philippines was a territory.
Right.
But Filipinos weren't part of misogyny, whatever that, I can't pronounce the word, the law, interracial relations. It was okay for white women and Filipinos, you know, and the thing that was happening is white women were choosing Filipino men because who, you know, to them they're good Christian men, right? These Catholics are coming over and so they're choosing to be, there's no coercion, is they're choosing to be with these men. And so so we sort of explore that and how that sort of relates to the relationship and Remy's desire to lead and have an independent and successful business so that he can sort of break, not so much break a barrier, but have something of his own. And so, you know, he's just trying to. So we find them then in 1930, and then we come back to the last season, which would be season 5, where we find them at the end of the first season, and they're trying to sort of reconcile where their relationship is at that point. And so, and whether or not that might deteriorate the relationship that she currently is in, and as well as where their son decides to go at that point, and close it out.
and a studio doesn't want to pick this up. Like I'm intrigued just sitting here listening to
Yeah.
this.
Not going in that order. No. So I rewrote the pilot as a half-hour dramedy. So when I wrote the hour drama, this manager came back and he said, like, hey, you need to introduce a crime element. No 1 hour drama is getting picked up without a crime element. And so I was like, fucking kid. He's like, this is a great, and he's like, this is a great character driven story, but no one's gonna pick it up. Put some criminal activity in it. And I was like, was a kid selling weed? I got him busted for weed. He's like, yeah, but you don't carry that on, right? What if he's selling weed and when he comes back to San Francisco or whatever? And it's like, knowing this, like, yeah, but weed's legal, right? What are you doing, right? So
Yeah.
but you need to introduce that criminal element. And so
I really
like,
hate this idea where studios are like, but you have to have this or like,
but the mandates are real.
Yeah, like tell
the
good
mandates
stories.
are real.
And that's what fans really want is a good story that's being told, and the studios just don't get it.
They do, but they control it. So here, that's the thing that kind of sucks, right? Is that you sort of have to walk that line, and so that's where you sort of get into the indie aspect of it. So, but I don't know if you've noticed, but more and more is being done with the half-hour dramedy, right? Like you look at The Bear, right?
Yeah,
that's a drama, right? But no, it's also a comedy. That's a comedy wrapped in a drama. So they were able to sell that as a half hour. So there's no criminal element to that. There's more dramatic elements to it. You can maybe argue the satirical aspects of family that are in there, right? Because the drama really peaks in that show, right? Because it's very character driven and the characters are really, they really get into it to the point to where you're just like, this is fucking what is going, right? You kind of find yourself almost laughing and then going, oh man, that's fucked up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So, and like season 2, was it? Or like the family dinner?
The family dinner, right? That's a prime example, right? Because that starts ramping up, right? You go, this woman fucking crashes a car into the house to stop a family fight, right? Like, what the fuck absurdist shit is going on here, right? But that's what I'm saying, right? It ramps up the like then you start going like this is a comedy,
right?
Because this isn't like right. So they're able to sell that. So you kind of see what had been a typical 1 hour drama is you now see that, right? So you see like Virgin River, that's on Netflix. I don't know if you've ever watched that, but there's a criminal element to every season, you know, and so you're kind of like, I fucking see it. Sandman on Netflix, 1 hour drama, but what are they doing? They're hunting a serial killer.
Right. Well, I mean, but that's also one of the lines in the comic book too. So I mean, you know,
right? But still, reading. I mean, I love Sandman, and you read it. It's a very mystical story, and it goes into very deep philosophical points, and it's also it's character driven, right?
Right.
This hunting for the serial killer for what's his face, the teeth for eyes. I forget his name. Yeah. So that doesn't exist in the comic book where they're hunting for this guy as a serial killer.
Just a side character, right?
Right. So in the show through that first season, it's a cop drama. Lucifer.
Yeah, Lucifer is a whole different monster, which I mean, it's very different from the comic. That's the 1 hour world it had to get sold into. Yeah,
because but the comic book's not a half hour comedy, right? No, it's not a half hour, right? So it has to fit into the 1 hour, and that mandate says you got to put criminal in there. It's a buddy cop. It's a buddy cop show.
Yeah,
right. And so and you know, you're not wrong in the sentiment, you know, but that's just how it is. And so streaming can kind of get away with it because they can break the boundaries of commercial placement. So you can get a half hour, but that runs 34 to 40 minutes, right?
Yeah.
But that 1 hour, you know, has to fit spots. So you get that 41 to 55. And so, you know, you're talking page count and all that, and hitting particular beats for that 1 hour drama. You have to have that criminal element. And so he's like, you know, the manager came back and said, you know, you got to put that criminal element in it or write it as a feature. And so it's like, all right, fuck it, it's a half hour dramedy, and we're going to tell it linear. We're not going to go backwards. And then I pulled out the 1930 Watsonville story and created a separate thing out of that called Man On. And I think I have the log line in that publisher sample I sent you, but that's going to be its own thing too. So I do have somebody who was interested in the I don't know, Lumpia with a Vengeance. I don't know if you know.
Oh, they're good friends of ours, man.
Yes.
Diego and Lawrence are on the show all the time. And then they've been on the show multiple times, and actually Patricio just booked. He's going to be on the show in February.
Nice. But Lawrence and I were talking about it at Fan Expo, and he really dug, Tesoi told from back, and I told him the same thing. I was like, look, man, I pitched this.
Yeah, I was going to bring them up. I was going to say, I mean, like, there's a place for, especially now, there's a place for Pinoy stories that
right.
That are out there, because Lumpia with a Vengeance is a good example of something being successful that they did themselves. Like he wrote that in high school with a bunch of high school kids, and then 10 years later, or what almost 20 years later,
20 years later,
they made the sequel to it, and it's like now it's kind of taking off. I mean, they get spots at San Diego Comic-Con. Like it's a big deal. Actually, I have around here somewhere in this room somewhere. I just got the DVD copy of the original movie.
Oh, nice! Wow.
Yeah, of the first movie.
Yeah, I was hanging out with them, and they were doing the booth at Sour Cherry Comics, which is in the Mission in San Francisco. But I was like, "Hey, man, let me buy." Oh, there you go.
Nice.
I'm from the Mission originally,
so I mean,
I'm a Hispanic kid from the Mission, so I mean, like that's my element.
So speaking of mandates and what stories can sell, I originally wrote Tesoi as gentrified, which is about a blended family in the Mission District trying to keep their generational Mexican restaurant open in the face of gentrification, right?
Oh, yeah.
And that script won Best Teleplay at CineQuest in 2019, right? And that was what got me my first meetings with agents, managers, and producers. But then Hentified came out on Netflix, and I did not realize that it was a streaming show prior to that, and I was like, oh man, that's my show, right? But I had to write it, and I'm half Filipino, so but I had wanted to tell the story of Tesoi, but I had to understand the market is Filipinos in front of the camera wasn't a thing, and is not a thing, and unfortunately is a harder sell than selling a story about a Hispanic family in the Mission. And so, but I had to put the element of interracial. And so his wife, the lead's wife, is white. And so there's that dynamic of being in an interracial relationship, but also sort of her coming from a family with money to coming down to where, hey, we're this small restaurant in the Mission District, and I didn't want this restaurant, but now I have it, and I got to keep it open, and we're going to change the menu, right? And so so it was originally written as that, and then again when Hentified came out, I was like, gentrified is dead, and how do I remix this? And so I was just like, I'm just going to tell the story how I want to tell it, and sort of make it a metaphor, so to speak, or create the parallel. So the menu change that Gentrified was going to approach was basically making Senor Sisig. I don't know if you've had
Senor Sisig is the shit. I love this.
Right, so basically they're going to make Senor Sisig, right? They're going to blend Filipino and Mexican food, which is how far off is that, right? And so we're going to blend the food, and then they were going to blend the food, and then that was going to be the thing that keeps the restaurant open. And so, but like I said, like the script won, and I don't know if I was ever going to pitch it as something to make, but again, like when we write something, we're writing to get into someone else's room, and so this was mainly what it was. But it was disheartening to see another show get made, which was just, it was my story, but in East LA.
Yeah.
And so I was like, all right, this, which is fine, right? This happens all the time, and so you just kind of remix it or sell it. But Tesoi took a more personal turn because my son is, my wife is white, and so my son, look, he's got blue eyes. Like he doesn't look Filipino. Like, and I look Latino at best, But I grew up with a single mother, and the culture that I know is Filipino, right?
Right.
And so, yeah, I mean, it's it was basically a story about how do I keep my kids in the culture, and it's with the food. And
Right.
so,
Actually, matter of fact, I've got a ube leche flan in my
nice,
fridge right now. So
nice.
good, man. So we do have to start wrapping up here, man. I've got some wrap up questions for you here, and this one's gonna hit close to home, especially after telling the story of Tisoy. So, first question I got for you here is gonna be the hardest question you're ever gonna be asked in your life. Are you ready for this?
All right.
What is your favorite kind of taco?
Man. So, I don't know if you've ever been to Chica's in LA.
I haven't.
All right. They do this really good fish taco. It's a cod battered with this spicy cabbage slaw on it. I know it's sort of gringified, but it's fucking delicious. And so Chica's in LA that was for me. I mean, it's not the best. I don't know, man. Tacos at Tapatio in Richmond on 23rd. Those are fucking.
My wife
delicious
would know
too.
that because my wife is from El Sobrani, so she.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have this joke in my head. Every time I see Kyle Shanahan on the sidelines, I always go, "This man is like a white boy from El Sobrani."
My wife is a white woman from El Sobrani, so there we go.
A white boy wannabe norteño from El Sobrani. That's
God. that's that and Antioch. That's just kind of.
There you go. Antioch is the new Richmond, though. I don't know if you know this.
Yeah, I know. I lived in Brentwood for a little bit, man, so I know. Okay. When I moved out of the city, man, I had to. Like I said, I grew up in the Mission, so when I moved out of the city, I moved out to the East Bay, and then I bought a house out here in Sacramento. So.
Oh, nice.
But yeah, so what's some advice that you might have for anyone trying to get into the industry, whether it be the comic industry, film industry, anything like that? What are some pitfalls that you would recommend avoiding?
Don't stop. Mm-hmm. So, I have a lot of colleagues who say, get to this place and they had tried, and then, I got friends I went to film school with, and at close to 50, they're finally getting to direct their first films, right? Or they're directing their first features. They're not the greatest, but basically it's like you cannot stop. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's part of the whole thing. The industry is built around people who will keep going, but it's also built in a way the gatekeepers are there to get you to quit.
Right. It's I hate to compare anything to the military, but it's basically if you go to any school, you always have gatekeepers at those schools, and especially like when I went through selection, it's almost like the NCOs that are in charge of that are the gatekeepers, even though they say that they don't want anyone to quit. They're trying to get everybody to quit. So,
all right.
That's why the attrition rate is so high in Ranger selection and RASP. So, so I got again another hard question for you here. All right. So far, based on what I've read in Rise, right? Lieutenant Colonel Thomas Conway versus Officer Max Walker. Who wins in a firefight?
Max Walker. Who's Max Walker?
Time Cop.
Oh shit! Fucking Conway.
Especially with that with that prosthetic that he has, like
fucking pull that shit off. Just
exactly.
Anyway.
Oh my God. I had an NCO, Sergeant Kapacheski. There's a story about when we were going through selection. They go, they told a story of so he jumped in, and when he landed, he broke his prosthetic leg. Got pissed off, grabbed another one off of his pack because I guess he carried a spare, put it on, and went on target. And they're just like, "Yeah, you need to be like him." But it's like. Yeah, it's like between that and but I mean, he is a kickboxer. Max Walker is a kickboxer. So
Yeah, but you done combatives in the army, right? I mean, you know, modern army combatives is
level 4,
the
baby.
blend. It's the blend of right. So Conway is that and beyond, right? And then kickboxing, great, but there's a lot of no, Conway's he's gonna achieve the clinch and bring him to the ground, right? I mean,
especially in especially when you get into special operations, you've probably seen enough of it around where we'll put out mats and basically have MMA tournaments in the middle of a combat zone. So it's like just beat the
yeah.
crap out of each other.
I mean, we used to do at Fort Riley. You had the pit,
Yeah.
and so you would Fridays if you went out, you would crawl around and you would fight in the pit essentially. You just but anyway, Conway would I mean, like I said, I get it, but I always say like MMA, if you go to schools that teach you MMA, right? I was like they teach you to tap out, right?
Yeah.
They don't, if you're in the army and they teach you modern armed combatives, like they teach you to kill. Like it's a big difference, and like it's not even a matter of like it's anything and everything is a weapon, right?
Yeah.
Anything and everything is a weapon, right? Anything and everything is a weapon, and Conway's like, oh cool, you can kick. You know what? I got a brick. Let's do this quick.
And he also knows
like
sock P too. He's not just Mac P. He also knows sock P too. And like I guarantee you, like going through sock P is just basically it is all survival. It's how do you survive in the worst of conditions. So
right.
So yeah, no, I was just trying to play devil's advocate, but I mean, in my opinion, looking at the two of them, aside Max Walker has a ridiculous gun. Thomas Conway, technology and skill wise,
technology, yeah. Mm-hmm. Firefight. I know you'd mentioned firefight too. So, but yeah, I have a feeling that in the firefight, Conway's gonna win that one.
Conway's got better fundamentals because remember Max Walker's a cop. We know how good cops are in comparison to SF officers, right?
Right.
It's like he's a cop, he's SF. Dude in SF wins. He went through the Q course at the beginning. All right. So what's next for you, man? What's the next thing on your plate?
So I know I need to finish False Flag, but I also know I need to get out more in the public. Last year, had every intention of making that film, but also at least getting what I had and what is upcoming out, and the storms that hit us in the Santa Cruz Mountains that like our road got washed out. Like there was nothing else that I could do except for we have 2 chainsaws. Like that's where we're at is lopping away trees and we're still recovering from that. And so I managed to finally get some breathing room this fall. And, Veteran Comic-Con was the first time I got back into conventions. And the hope was in this year was to hit WonderCon and hit San Diego Comic-Con, to really push out to maybe New York Comic-Con. But we got hit with 6 figures of damage. So, we're still really recovering.
Yeah,
but that's the hope is to get back to the conventions mainly, and other than pushing out Rise 1, I want to push out Don't Forget to Feed the Dark Watchers and a complete version of False Flag.
Awesome, and I can't wait for all that, man. These just the previews that we got, and then reading the first book for Rise I was like, I need more. I need, and that's signs of a good story is when by the time you finish reading the first book, the question is, you're like, okay, well, that was good. Or is it okay, so when's the next one come out? That's where I'm at, is when's the next one come out, right. So I can read more, and again, it's a sign of good storytelling. I can, I can see that there's a lot more story to be told. Cause I mean, there was still a lot that we didn't get to as far as like, some of the questions we wanted to ask, but that just means we need to have you back on the show again.
Yeah. Hey, love to be back.
So where can everybody find you? Where can they follow you if they want to learn more about Redwood Comics as well as Rise and False Flag? Don't Forget to Feed the Dark Watchers, all that kind of stuff. Like where can everybody follow you at?
So redwoodcomics.com will be the best place to start. My personal Instagram, TikTok is at EJ Coffey. And then on Instagram, it's at Redwood Comics LLC. On TikTok, it's just at Redwood Comics. So those were the places that I'm most active. I do tend to forget to post. I'm not an avid. I'm not that active on social media. Working on trying to do that, trying to make it better, trying to get at least the time lapses of my work processes out there so folks can see that and see what's upcoming and they can get an idea of what goes into at least my process.
Awesome, man.
Awesome.
Well, we appreciate you coming on, talking about your work. Again, there's a lot more to talk about. We definitely need to have you back on just to continue talking. I had a lot more questions to go deeper into some of this stuff, but time is a bitch sometimes. So again, man, like we mentioned before, you're welcome to stay for the last, well, we got about 30 minutes here. So the last 30 minutes, we're going to talk, worst video game movies. And we're basically what we're doing is a bracket, like a Sweet 16 style bracket. But going over like basically the chat gets the vote over who's which one's the best. Or worst,
all right, I'll stay on for that. But after that, I'll jump off. I mean,
no worries, man.
In half an hour, so.
Now, real quick, this is the end of the build here. So I've got everything built out here. As you can see right there, so we've got the VHS things right here, the Beauty and the Beast book. This is a Little Mermaid VHS that also has little film strip on the inside, and then of course everything else sits on the front here. So the Disney Villains is finished. Our next build, leading into the next couple weeks here, is the AT-AT.
Nice.
So I'm going to start getting that kind of placed. Graveyard, go ahead and take it over
here. So continuing our bracket for deeming the worst video game movie of all time. Just a quick recap. Last week we had Max Payne beat out Street Fighter. We had Blood Rain beat out the 1995 Mortal Kombat. Mortal Kombat Annihilation beat out Doom. Ass Creed beat out Tomb Raider 2018. And Super Mario Brothers 1993 version beat out Hitman for being worse. So we are finishing up the bottom half of bracket to get our top 8 or bottom 8, if you want to call them that. So first up, we do have Alone in the Dark versus Wing Commander for being the worst one.
I don't think I've seen any of those.
Wing Commander is terrible.
Yes.
It's so bad that Freddie Prinze Jr. has gone on record multiple times saying that he regretted making that movie.
Yes.
All right. I'm familiar. Okay. All right. I'm familiar with Wing Commander now. Okay. I have not seen it. And I think it might have been one of those scenarios of it's not worth the time. So
yeah. It's really not. As we discussed before, Mark Hamill and Ronald Perlman were in the video game version of Wing Commander. So they already had actors in the video games. And then decided to make a movie that have none of those people in it.
To be fair, and I guess this is still not being fair, but I mean, like, to be fair, Freddie Prinze Jr. and Matthew Lillard both said that the script was so much better than the movie they made.
Yeah. Yeah. This is a tough one for me personally, because I love Alone in the Dark, the video game. I think it's a classic horror video game series, and that our good friend Yui Bowl decided to make Alone in the Dark, and we know he
just fucks everything up. That guy cannot make a movie, man.
He does. That's the problem. He continues to get money to make stuff like this.
Oh, just because you can't make a movie doesn't mean that you won't make a movie, you know?
Right. So yeah, my vote is Alone in the Dark. Edward, what do you think?
So I'm familiar with Wing. I'm familiar with them as games. I'm familiar with Wing Commander based on recalling how awful it was conceptually, and so I'm gonna play devil's advocate, I guess. I'm gonna say Wing Commander. Just
like
Yeah.
jumping on that, like why? Like you had Mark Hamill already. Why not put
Mhm.
Mark Hamill in the movie? they did not put Mark Hamill in the movie at all. It's like you have Mark Hamill.
Yeah, that's.
I
That's
mean, it might have been something that had to do with the schedule, the payout,
Yeah,
scheduling as in the rates,
Mhm.
but also scheduling with those actors and whether or not they were available. But and that's not to say Freddie Prinze or any of the other actors involved didn't know any better, but it's also possible, given Ron Perlman and Mark Hamill and their tenure in the industry, that they might have saw, you know, if you have good representation, that rep will tell you
Stay away.
pass, stay away, or do it. And oftentimes, filmmakers who get work or who continue to get work are probably continuing to get work because they're, at the very least, they're good at running the set and saving studios money.
Yui Bowl
So
definitely
that's
saved studios money.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's at some point you kind of, I mean, a studio will probably recognize better odds. Like if they could get, J.J. Abrams, for example, to make your movies, then yeah, they're going to go with J.J. Abrams. But if they can't, then they'll get someone who can run the set. And what was it? The Island of Dr. Moreau.
Mhm.
That he was a second-time filmmaker and was just essentially harassed off the set by the actors.
Yes, good old poor Richard Stanley.
All right, and so yeah, but they brought somebody in who basically can manage the set, right? And
Yep.
and other than that, but manage the people and the egos. And so, and that was basically the core of how that film hit the finish line. I mean, some studios would have pulled the plug, but I think The Island of Dr. Moreau having been a novel, I think they, the money, the potential in that was, greater.
Oh yeah.
So,
what about you, Phil? What are you saying?
It's like pulling teeth, man. This is like it's Yui Bowl, who's never made a good movie in his entire career, versus again one of a movie that is considered one of the worst movies ever made.
Yes.
So bad that the actors again regretted making it. I think I'm gonna go with Wing Commander, man. As much as I mean, like I want to go with both. If I had if I could, I would say both of them are fucking terrible.
They absolutely both are horrendous movies.
And this is coming from a guy that loves terrible movies.
Yeah, I do love horrible movies. So I freely admit that every week, multiple times. I think. So yeah, I think Wing Commander moves on because Say Wong also voted for Wing Commander. So
let me look at Instagram, see if anybody said anything here.
You and your Instagrams.
In my Instagrams. Yeah, no word in Instagram.
All right. So Wing Commander is a worse movie. We're moving that one along. So next up we have Rampage versus House of the Dead. Look, another Yui Bowl movie.
Yui Bowl movies are going to be all through this. I mean, we're not losing a chance at Yui Bowl being at the top of your movies are shitty. So
very much so.
House of the Dead, again, a very, very bad adaptation of a game that probably didn't need a movie.
No. I mean, you it probably cost $20 just to beat that game. It only lasted 30 minutes. Altogether.
House of the Dead doesn't have enough story for you to make a movie out of it.
It's Resident Evil, but first-person shooter. That's pretty much it with a Leica. I also very much hate Rampage a lot because once again, it was giant creatures destroying buildings. That was the game. But let's take a movie and then focus on the humans. So they completely destroyed what the main focus of the game was.
But not just that. we're gonna create a story just because The Rock's in it. So
Yes.
I mean, I don't think he would have jumped on. He's like, "You want to do it?" No, the script has to change. So, I think that's part of the reason. But yeah,
Yeah, I'm going Rampage. I think Say Long saying Rampage because how can you screw up a kaiju movie? That's how you screw up a kaiju movie.
how do you screw up a
Yeah.
kaiju movie?
Yeah. What about you, Edward? What do you think?
So I haven't seen Alone in the Dark. I've seen Rampage.
Mhm.
I haven't seen it. I put it on, and then at some point I said, "Fuck this," and kept it on, and folded laundry while just folded laundry in the background while Rampage is playing. I was like, I just gave this movie one on the metrics. God damn. But yeah, I think I had it on in the background. I don't think I finished it. I just I was like, all right, Rampage, hey, right? And I don't even, yeah.
Yeah.
It's one of those movies where it's like nothing memorable happened. I don't remember anything that happened in this movie.
Yeah.
Say Long. Ralph is the wolf. George is the monkey. Liz is the lizard. Yeah.
Which again, and then they made George just a mutant ape, and it's like, no, he's supposed to be a person.
Yes, they're all people that turn into kaiju.
Right. The Rock should have been George and not been, The Rock trying to talk to George.
Yes.
I mean, at first when I saw the trailer, I thought they were making a movie like, was it Congo or where they had, I thought that, all right, maybe they're doing something similar to that or whatever. And so I don't know. I just, at some point it just got, in these type of movies, you gotta, suspend your the disbelief. Like, you gotta, you're going into a movie. It's like, I think the only time I could not suspend my disbelief was the Dungeons and Dragons with Marlon Wayans. I think I was on a date, and there's a theater in Berkeley on Shattuck. Is that the theater on Shattuck in Berkeley?
Oh yeah.
Took the Bart to go and watch this thing, and as it was just this, we were laughing our asses off in the theater so loud, and people were just very shh. Man, it was that bad. But anyway, but Rampage, I don't think it quite reaches that awfulness, but at least it has production quality. I mean, but yeah, to your point, how you mess up a kaiju movie is like, they could have done something like Pacific Rim in a way, but yeah, I'm gonna go with Rampage.
What about you, Phil?
It was Rampage versus House of the Dead.
Yeah.
I mean, House of the Dead is one of those movies that is so bad.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even remember half of what happened in that movie because I just kind of block it out. And
I mean, that's perfectly fair.
and the conversation right now is which movie was worse.
Mm-hmm.
As bad as Rampage was, because I'm not giving Rampage any credit whatsoever. There's nothing in here where I'm saying it's better than the other one, but I think House of the Dead is probably the worst movie. Because yes, I watched it. I can't tell you what happened in that movie.
Yeah, I mean that's very valid and fair too. Like I said, as much as I hate Uwe Boll's movies, they are horror movies, but they are so atrocious to the video games. He like I said, I think I said this last week before. It's like he walked through, his Blockbuster or his video game rental store and goes, I like the cover art. I'll make a movie. What do I have to go off of? The cover art. That's it. I'm not going to play the game. There's zombies and guns. Easy. And there's a house. And
what more do you need?
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna go with House of the Dead just because it is a wholly forgettable movie.
It is until the second one where you have Sid Haig in it, and Sid Haig is a classic.
He made another one?
Yes.
Only you would know this.
Generally, yeah, I think that's a consensus. Only I know about the House of the Dead too. So, but unfortunately, Rampage has more votes, so it does move on.
Okay.
And the last one to get into our final 8, we have Far Cry, which, as we discussed before,
Another fucking Yui Bowl movie.
Yes, it is. So Far Cry, once again, he looked at the cover art and goes, I like that name. I'll make the movie. Cool. And then versus Billy and Jimmy Lee of Double Dragon.
Another terrible fucking movie, man. Oh my god. That ruined another property that we grew up playing, and it was just like, why?
Yeah. What do you think, Ed?
I remember seeing Double Dragon.
Were you as disappointed with it as we were?
I still want to say, I mean, I guess I didn't realize I made a film out of Far Cry, and then I just Googled it just to see who was in it, and I was like, I've seen enough.
Yeah.
I think. I mean, I'm probably going to go with I'm probably going to go with Far Cry as being worse than Double Dragon. At the very least, Double Dragon, I felt I was more entertained by than what little I've seen in the what promotional material I just saw with Far Cry. But at least what's his name? T-1000 was in it. Robert Patrick.
Yep.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm gonna say Double Dragon was better. Far Cry was worse.
Yeah, because the Far Cry games are fantastic story-driven games to no end, and you'd think more people would know that there's a Far Cry movie based off a hugely popular IP, and no one has any idea about this, and that's the thing. Like, no one knows about Far Cry, but everybody knows Double Dragon.
Everybody knows Double Dragon was a thing.
Yeah. Absolutely.
The studios thought they did a good thing. They thought the studio thought, hey, we made a movie based on a video game. All the video game people were going to come and watch it.
Right.
Not realizing it's like, what fucking bastardization of this game did you do?
Yeah. What do you think, Phil? What are you going with?
Yui Bowl is moving on again.
Oh, he hasn't been moving on. That's the thing. So yeah,
because I've been voting for Yui Bowl.
I know.
Else has not been voting for Yui Bowl. So the fact that he took a game that has so many rich stories, because it's an anthology game to begin with. So I mean, it's not
right.
They each story has nothing to do with the last one.
Right.
But you took something that had so many good stories attached to it and decided to make something that just, I mean, he didn't even use the formula for Far Cry.
Correct.
There's not an unwinnable scenario that happens at the point in the movie. Like, it's just fucking bad.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's without a doubt. I think he learned his lesson from making horror video games. He goes, you know what? I'll do something that's not horror.
I'm gonna make an action video game.
Exactly. Maybe I'll be successful then.
Was he? No.
No.
Absolutely not.
Yeah. Far Cry definitely wins and moves forward. So don't worry, Yui Bowl, you're still in the running. Doesn't help that you had like half of these. So
it's great that like the whole bottom half of this, most of it has been Yui Bowl movies.
Mm-hmm. Oh. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, like I said, he's made movies. Gotta give him that. He's made movies. I haven't made a movie. So, but can I make it better than him? Probably.
I guarantee you can make it better than him.
All right. So, to round up to our final 8, we have left Mario Brothers, Assassin's Creed, Mortal Kombat Annihilation, Blood Rain, Max Payne, Wing Commander, Rampage, and Far Cry. So to determine our final 4, first up is the 1993 Super Mario Brothers movie versus Assassin's Creed.
Fuck me. They're both bad.
Mm-hmm.
I have. So here's my thing. Super Mario Brothers, awful, right? Cult
Yes.
following though. There's a cult following behind that,
Mhm.
right? And I would rather watch Super Mario. I would rather watch the Mario Brothers movie. John
Yeah.
Leguizamo and
Yep.
what's his face?
Bob Hopkins.
Bob Hoskins.
Bob Hopkins
Yeah, Hoskins.
over Assassin's Creed for
Yeah.
any day of the week.
I watched.
But being said, Mario Brothers is still a worse movie than Assassin's Creed. And not just production quality aside, just the story was awful. But it's one of those movies, again, like there's something about awful movies that like I'll watch it. Super Mario is one of those, like, you know what, I'll fucking watch it. I'll watch it again.
That's Graveyard's entire existence as a podcaster. Oh, this movie's shitty. I'll watch it.
and
the entire franchise of it too. Yes.
Yeah. And then, in stepping out, but just Spawn, the movie, I also thought was just, even in the theater, having read the comics, I was just like, this is awful. They're going to have a fight in their wife's fireplace,
Mm-hmm.
But, I would rather watch Super Mario than Assassin's Creed, but I still feel that Mario Brothers is a worse movie than Assassin's Creed.
I mean, I'm definitely the same boat. I love Super Mario. I love the movie. I mean, did I see it in theaters '93? I don't remember.
I definitely did. And I saw it subsequently multiple times. I think it was on HBO or whatever it was on. So I've only seen Assassin's Creed once, and I bought it.
Yeah. Oh my god.
Because I had no other way to watch it, and I was curious,
Mm-hmm.
and I have not watched it again since.
Yeah, like I said, I think I remember watching the Super Mario Brothers movie, whether it came out on VHS, because that's how old it is. But I remember thoroughly enjoying it as a kid.
Yes.
And I did not enjoy Assassin's Creed in any watch.
No.
So for me, to me, that's why I'm voting Assassin's Creed. It's just because it's not even so bad it's good, which Mario Brothers is. It's so bad it's good.
Yeah.
And it's become the running joke. But Assassin's Creed is just, it was made, is marketed, and then no one saw it and everyone forgot about it.
Yeah, no, it was bad because I mean, I liked the concept of what they were trying to do with it. It's just it had terrible execution.
Yes.
Because the idea was, we're gonna make a movie that lives in the universe of Assassin's Creed, but they just didn't do it right.
Mm-hmm.
Versus Super Mario Brothers. Again, it was one of those things where it's still a fairly endearing movie.
Yes.
It's a fun movie, even if you take out the fact that it's a Mario movie. It's a somewhat fun movie. I mean, like, Bowser's not Bowser. I did not realize that they turned Toad into a fucking Goomba.
Yes, that's why he had the harmonica.
Did Toad ever have a harmonica in the games?
No, he was never that annoying to also have a harmonica.
I didn't realize the harmonica dude was Toad. I was like, what?
You learned something 30 years after the movie. Aren't you proud of that?
And Yoshi was in it too, wasn't he?
Yoshi
at the very end.
He had like a little bit, like a bit section. And they referenced Yoshi being punched in the head for his tongue coming out because Bowser hits him.
Yes.
Yeah. Again, there's an endearing quality, even though it's like a weird cyberpunk movie, to Mario versus.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah.
Super Mario Brothers 2, but cyberpunk.
Yeah. Versus Assassin's Creed is just overall a shitty movie.
Mm-hmm.
There's
that's a good point.
it's just
You know what Super Mario Brothers reminded me of, or one or the other reminded me of the other? Demolition Man. I honestly saw almost no difference between the two movies.
Oh, I think the people that saw Demolition Man made a Mario Brothers movie, hands down.
and the thing is I think that they were probably trying to cash in on the popularity of that, because the difference between those two movies is one of those not being the greatest movie ever, but one of those is watchable.
Right.
Because Demolition Man, I think what makes Demolition Man more watchable, and I'm going off on a tangent here, but I mean, like, what makes it more watchable is because Wesley Snipes, just his character was so watchable. Like, he was just such a good character. It wasn't even that he was that good of a character. He was a well acted character. You believed how maniacal he was.
Right.
The dude was basically the Joker.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and that's the thing is again, it's, going back to the advice I would give, right? Well developed characters in Demolition Man all around. Well developed. Subtext told a lot of that story, and at least with Sylvester Stallone's character, I mean, it was full context was given, and he puts it out there, having seen his wife and kid punching and kicking the, you know what I mean? So that sort of tells you where that character's at, but just the darkness that existed in Wesley Snipes' character, where he's just, he's Nolan's Joker, right?
Yeah.
So
he killed an entire bus of kids to bait.
Right. But
just
but they didn't make him out to be the worst. They made the government out to be the worst.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't just a matter of what Wesley Snipes' character wanted to do. It was the people that set him free to do the things.
Right.
So, but yeah, Mario.
How do you kill Edgar Friendly? Right. Just that was such a messed up plot. So
I mean, yeah, Mario Brothers for that. You're right. I mean, it has the similarities aside. I mean, there was an endearing quality to the film that even now, as I think of it, I'm like, I want to see it again.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, it's something that I would put on and watch, even if it's in the background. It's something that I would put on and watch. Because I would never I would never willingly watch Assassin's Creed again.
Right. Yeah. I completely agree. So I said that's why I'm saying Assassin's Creed.
I say Assassin's Creed as well.
Yeah, I'm gonna go Assassin's Creed.
All right. We gotta change. So that puts Assassin's Creed. Moving on. I like it.
Ass Creed.
Ass Creed. Yes, good old Ass Creed.
Good old Ass Creed.
I mean, I always, when I was watching it, I was thinking to myself, if only they had stuck to maybe Desmond's story, right? I mean,
yeah.
And that's the thing is, I've always felt like they killed off Desmond too early, and I get it because they were planning on ending the franchise, and then somebody had the idea of, well, we can just continue the Animus, and it's like, okay, I get that, and the stories that they've been telling lately have been great, but I wanted more Desmond, and I thought I thought that they were gonna do, a whole story about. I thought the movie was going to be about Desmond and kind of finally get that modern day Desmond as an assassin that we always but we never got.
Right.
And it wasn't that. And it was just you're going to tell this story of another assassin he was basically another Templar.
Yeah.
And just it was not good.
Do we want do one more? It's about 10 o'clock. or 8 o'clock your time, Phil.
How many do we have left on this side?
We just started the new bracket run. So
Oh no, we can end this right here.
okay. Cool.
So let me go ahead and switch cameras here. We'll do our pluggables and we'll get going here. All right. Let me switch mics. Wow. Got to move to the other side of the room.
Oh, poor you. Don't trip.
I know, right?
Now you have your mixture, I'm sure you have cables everywhere again.
Yes, that's exactly what's happening right now. There are cables everywhere in this office. All right. Here we go. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I hope everybody's had fun tonight. We definitely got through this bracket a little bit more. And of course, want to thank our guests, Edward Coffey, for coming on and telling your story. Again, we definitely have more that we want to talk about with you, man. We definitely invite you to come back on again in the future to tell more of your story, man, because it was good and we enjoyed it. So
Thank you.
with that
I
being
appreciate
said,
being on.
absolutely, man. With that being said, one more time before we let you go ahead and give us your pluggables. Any plugs, any shows you're doing, any websites, anything you got going on.
Sure. Just check us out at redwoodcomics.com. All of our social media information is there, as well as updates and a newsletter that we have too. So subscribe to the newsletter at redwoodcomics.com and follow our links to our social media accounts. And if you wanted to see any of my personal work, most of it is posted on TikTok and Instagram at EJ Coffey.
Shut up and take my money.
All right. Graveyard, go ahead and let everybody know where you're at. What are all the pluggables, sir?
Yes, I'm Graveyard, co-host of the Mostly Pod Out at Night, Mostly podcast.
They mostly
Pod.
at night. Mostly.
It's been a long time since we.
You have no idea how satisfying it was to press that button. All right.
Make sure to check out our new show that we have every Wednesday called Conversations in the Void, and that is everywhere at Pod Out at Night. So make sure to check Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube for Pod Out at Night. We have new stuff coming to you every single week. And on top of that, you can find me at Kyber K Production 2 to 3 days a week. You can see me here on Mondays harassing Phil while he's gaming. You can see us here on the build every Thursday here at Distance Learning. And if you notice, there's a new handle under my name. New revelations and new things coming up in 2024, as we discussed before. I was invited this week to join a horror content creator team for 2024 to do more in the horror world. We're going to do skits, we're going to do short films, we're going to do a whole bunch of new stuff and more stuff, and get me more into the horror world and media and everything like that. So make sure to check that out. But Horror Raven, that's only on Facebook right now, but new stuff coming in 2024.
Oh, that's exciting, man. I'm excited for you, bro.
Yes.
All right. Well, you guys know who I am, your boy Young Phil, Distance Nerding. Of course, you can connect with us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, TikTok, Threads, YouTube, Discord, MySpace, Vine, GeoCities, Friendster, Second Life, AIM, Farmers Only, Christian Mingle, OnlyFans. Only pictures of Aaron Watson's feet and mandals and the beard. The beard. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, if you'd like us to break up with your boyfriend, girlfriend, significant other, pet, schoolyard bully, annoying neighbor, or just tell us how much you enjoy us, hate us, or wish the internet would just consume us completely and spit us out at the feet of the devil himself, send us an email at your favorite place. I was not prepared for myself. I'm over here reading and I'm like, wait a minute, where's my button? Send us an email at insnerding@aol.com. That is it from us, ladies and gentlemen. It is now time for the dance party. Let's go ahead and get this whole thing going. All right, Graveyard, give the example.
Distance nerding.
Send it back to hell.
Eddie.
Take a turn in the wind.
I see you.
Oh, putang ina, shit. See everybody next week.
Bye.